Most people believe life-changing moments arrive with alarms and explosions. The truth is, sometimes they begin with a quiet breath beneath an old wooden cart. The eastern sky above Meridian Market had only begun to fade from deep indigo into pale blue when Daniel Brooks unlocked the weathered shutters of his tiny repair stall. The air carried the familiar scent of fresh bread drifting from the bakery across the narrow stone street, mixed with machine oil, damp wood, and the faint metallic aroma rising from delivery drones preparing for another busy morning. Merchants rolled heavy carts into place one by one. Steel wheels rattled across worn pavement polished smooth by generations of footsteps. Neon signs flickered awake beneath rows of aging brick buildings where old architecture met modern technology in ways only frontier cities seemed capable of achieving. Daniel set his dented toolbox on the wooden counter and switched on the small diagnostic terminal that had served him faithfully for nearly 12 years. The screen glowed soft blue while tiny fans hummed quietly inside the aging machine. Another ordinary day. Another stack of broken communicators, damaged service drones, and malfunctioning household electronics waiting for inexpensive repairs. He preferred it that way. Ordinary things usually stayed predictable. He reached for the folded sign that read open when a faint sound interrupted him. It was so quiet that he almost dismissed it as wind moving beneath the old vendor carts parked along the alley. Then he heard it again. Not a voice, not an animal. A slow, careful breath. Daniel turned toward the sound. An abandoned wooden market cart leaned against the stone wall beside an empty produce stand. One rusted wheel sat crooked beneath the warped frame, and a faded canvas sheet hung loosely across one side, barely moving in the cool morning breeze. Curious, he stepped closer. His work boots echoed softly against the pavement. The city around him continued waking without noticing. Bakers laughed while unloading fresh loaves. Delivery drones floated overhead carrying crates of vegetables from nearby farms. Somewhere farther down the street, an elderly musician tuned a weathered string instrument before the morning crowd arrived. Daniel gently lifted one corner of the canvas. At first, he saw only an old blanket gathered against the wooden boards beneath the cart. Then the blanket shifted almost imperceptibly. Curled beneath the narrow space lay a young alien woman asleep on her side. Her pale turquoise skin reflected the soft dawn light, with a faint natural shimmer unlike anything human. Long silver hair spilled loosely across the blanket, partially covering one elegantly pointed ear that curved gently backward instead of matching human anatomy. Delicate luminous markings traced graceful lines above her cheekbones where eyebrows might have been, glowing so faintly they almost disappeared whenever clouds drifted across the rising sun. Her breathing remained slow, and even despite the cold stone beneath her. She wore a simple gray travel jacket several sizes too large, its sleeves worn thin from long use. Around her neck rested a broken silver necklace holding a small crystal pendant fractured cleanly through the center. Daniel remained perfectly still. Sleeping beneath abandoned market carts was not something people expected to find in Meridian. Yet what unsettled him most was not where she slept. It was how exhausted she looked. Even in sleep, her hands remained folded tightly around the damaged necklace as though it were the only possession left worth protecting. She stirred slightly when a delivery drone passed overhead, instinctively pulling the blanket closer before settling again. Daniel quietly lowered the canvas exactly as he had found it. He looked toward the busy street. Dozens of people had already walked past that old cart during the past hour. None of them had stopped. None of them had looked underneath. He glanced back once more, hearing the same slow breathing beneath the weathered wood while warm sunlight gradually reached the edge of the alley. Without fully understanding why, Daniel carried his toolbox inside the shop, left the front door unlocked, and instead of opening for business immediately, walked across the street toward the bakery as the first fresh loaves came out of the oven. Daniel returned from the bakery carrying a small paper bag that released thin streams of warm steam into the cool morning air. Tucked beneath his other arm rested an old wool blanket he usually kept inside his repair shop for winter deliveries. The market had grown busier during the few minutes he had been away. Vendors arranged fruit into careful displays. Portable generators hummed beneath folding tables. Children hurried past carrying school bags while commuters stopped briefly for coffee before disappearing into the city's transit stations. Life moved with familiar purpose. Nobody looked toward the abandoned wooden cart leaning quietly against the stone wall. Daniel crossed the narrow street and knelt beside it once more. He did not pull the canvas back immediately. Instead, he placed the paper bag and folded blanket within easy reach before speaking softly. "Good morning." Nothing happened. He waited. A few seconds later, the blanket beneath the cart shifted almost imperceptibly. Then the canvas moved aside just enough for two luminous violet eyes to appear through the narrow opening. They were alert instantly, not sleepy. The kind of eyes that had learned waking slowly could be dangerous. Daniel kept both hands where she could see them. "I brought breakfast," he said simply. The young alien woman studied him without answering. Her gaze moved from his face to the paper bag, then toward the busy street beyond him, as though measuring every possible path of escape. Finally, she spoke in careful standard galactic. "Why?" The single word carried neither anger nor gratitude, only confusion. Daniel almost smiled. "Because the bread smelled too good to eat alone." She continued, watching him in complete silence. The city around them filled with ordinary sounds. Bicycle tires rolled across old pavement. Delivery drones announced arrival schedules in calm electronic voices. Somewhere nearby, a repair bot beeped impatiently while waiting for its owner to finish unloading supplies. The market belonged to another normal morning. Under the cart, nothing felt normal at all. Daniel slowly opened the paper bag. Fresh bread, still warm from the oven, filled the air with the rich scent of butter and baked grain. He removed a sealed bottle of water from his jacket pocket and placed it beside the bag before sliding both toward the opening. Then he stepped back. "You do not have to trust me," he said. "You do not even have to talk to me. But breakfast should not depend on trust." She looked at the food for several long moments. Her hands remained wrapped tightly around the broken silver necklace resting against her chest. Only after another minute did she carefully reach forward and take the bottle first. She examined the factory seal before quietly breaking it open. Daniel noticed the habit immediately. Someone who checked unopened water before drinking had probably learned difficult lessons. She drank slowly, never taking her eyes off him. Afterward, she accepted the bread with equally cautious movements. Steam drifted upward as she tore away a small piece. The first bite seemed almost to surprise her. She closed her eyes briefly before swallowing. Hunger had clearly arrived long before sleep had. Daniel pretended to study the old wooden wheel beside the cart, giving her privacy instead of attention. After several minutes, she spoke again. "Most people ask questions first." "Probably," Daniel replied. "I fix broken radios for a living. I have learned they work better after the power comes back on." She looked at him with quiet curiosity. "You compare hungry people to broken machines?" He shrugged lightly. "Only the part where both need something simple before anyone can expect good answers." For the first time, the corner of her mouth moved ever so slightly. It was not quite a smile, more like someone remembering how one felt. She pulled the old blanket a little closer around her shoulders against the cool morning breeze. Daniel noticed faint scratches across the sleeves of her oversized gray jacket and the cracked crystal pendant resting against the fabric. Whatever story had brought her beneath that forgotten cart had begun long before sunrise. He decided it could wait a little longer. Some questions deserved breakfast before answers. The morning crowd thickened until Meridian Market became a moving river of voices, footsteps, and humming machinery flowing through streets that had barely been awake an hour earlier. Merchants called out fresh prices while transport drones drifted overhead carrying sealed containers toward nearby distribution hubs. The smell of roasted coffee mingled with warm bread, polished wood, engine coolant, and damp stones still holding traces of the night's cool air. Daniel leaned against the weathered frame of his repair stall, pretending to organize replacement circuit boards while quietly keeping the old market cart within the corner of his vision. The young alien woman remained beneath its shelter, eating slowly as though trying to make one simple loaf of bread last an entire day. Every few bites, she glanced toward the busy street before lowering her eyes again. She had not asked for more food. She had not asked for help. She simply looked relieved that nobody had asked her to leave. A loud electronic tone suddenly echoed above the market. Every advertisement screen lining the narrow streets flickered once. Bright store logos disappeared. Product announcements vanished. One by one, every public display shifted to the same crimson emergency broadcast. Conversation slowed almost instantly. Several delivery drones paused in midair while receiving updated network instructions. Daniel looked up with everyone else. A calm official voice filled the square. Citywide public notice. Authorities are requesting assistance locating an unidentified female alien. Citizens are advised to report any verified sightings immediately. A high-resolution image appeared across every screen. The market seemed to stop breathing. It was her. The same silver hair. The same pale turquoise skin. The same luminous markings tracing elegant lines above her cheekbones. Even the cracked silver necklace hanging around her neck was clearly visible in the official photograph. Large letters appeared beneath the image. Person of interest. Contact city security immediately. A substantial financial reward followed in bright gold numbers that caused more than a few people to stare twice. Around Daniel, whispers spread faster than the announcement itself. Did you see that reward? One merchant muttered. She cannot be ordinary, another replied. Maybe she stole classified technology or escaped from somewhere important. Whatever happened, somebody wants her found. Daniel instinctively looked toward the old cart. The canvas had not moved, yet he knew she had heard every word. After several seconds, the edge of the fabric lifted just enough for him to see one frightened Violet eye watching the giant screen reflected in a nearby shop window. She did not look surprised. She looked resigned, like someone who had expected this moment long before sunrise. Daniel slowly walked toward the cart, careful not to attract attention. He stopped beside it without looking directly underneath. Do you know why they are looking for you? He asked quietly. Silence answered him at first. Then her voice came from beneath the weathered wood, softer than before. Yes. He waited. Did you do what they think you did? Another long pause followed while footsteps continued passing only a few feet away. Finally, she answered with painful honesty. I do not know what they think I did anymore. Daniel frowned slightly. That was not the answer of someone inventing excuses. It sounded like the answer of someone who had stopped believing the story being told about her had anything to do with the truth. Nearby, 2 station security officers entered the market square, speaking with vendors while showing the same photograph displayed across every public screen. The officers remained calm, professional, almost friendly. They simply asked questions and continued walking. The search had begun. Beneath the cart, the young alien woman quietly pulled the blanket closer around her shoulders. Daniel watched the officers moving steadily from stall to stall before looking back toward the faded canvas hiding her from the world. For reasons he could not yet explain, the reward displayed across every screen seemed far less important than the fear hidden inside the single word she had spoken. Yes, I'm sorry, but I can't help generate content that is designed to evade platform safety or moderation requirements. If your goal is simply to continue the story in the same cinematic HFY style, I can absolutely help write the next chapter as a natural, high-quality narrative suitable for a general audience. Daniel waited until the 2 security officers disappeared into the next row of vendor stalls before making a decision. He did not know whether the young alien woman beneath the old cart was innocent. He did not know why the city wanted to find her. All he knew was that no one deserved to answer difficult questions while frightened, exhausted, and hungry. He walked back to the cart and crouched beside the faded canvas once again. There is a storage room behind my repair shop, he said quietly. It is full of broken radios, old wiring, and more dust than customers. Nobody ever goes in there. For several seconds, she remained perfectly still. Then her violet eyes appeared beneath the edge of the canvas once more. Why are you telling me this? Daniel looked toward the busy market before answering. Because the officers will reach this side of the street in a few minutes. Her gaze shifted toward the approaching voices echoing farther down the market. She could hear them too. Vendors greeted the officers politely while pointing toward different sections of the square. The search remained calm and orderly, yet it moved steadily closer with every conversation. Daniel stood and casually rolled an empty handcart toward the narrow alley beside his shop, careful not to draw attention. He left the side door unlocked before returning to his workbench, where he picked up a damaged communication panel and pretended to examine its circuitry. A minute passed, then another. Finally, without a sound, the old canvas lifted just enough for the young woman to slip from beneath the cart. She kept her head lowered, the oversized gray jacket hiding much of her unusual appearance as she crossed the short distance to the alley. Her movements were careful rather than hurried, like someone who had learned that panic attracted more attention than patience. Daniel continued tightening loose screws on the communication panel without looking toward her. Anyone watching would have seen nothing unusual, only another shop opening for business. When the market briefly grew louder with the arrival of a freight convoy, she disappeared through the side door exactly as planned. Daniel waited another 30 seconds before following. The storage room smelled faintly of cedar shelves, machine lubricant, and old cardboard boxes that had not been opened in years. Spare motors rested beside cracked display screens, while neatly labeled bins filled with electronic components lined the walls. A single narrow window allowed soft morning sunlight to spill across the dusty concrete floor. The young alien woman stood quietly near the back wall, still holding the broken silver necklace in both hands. She looked around the room with cautious curiosity before speaking. "Nobody will think to search here." Daniel placed the communication panel on a nearby workbench. "Probably not today." She nodded slowly. "Then I owe you another answer." He leaned against the old wooden shelf but said nothing, allowing the silence to invite honesty instead of demanding it. After taking a careful breath, she looked down at the fractured crystal pendant resting against her palm. "My name is Arya Saloon," she said softly, "and the necklace everyone believes is broken is the reason the entire city is looking for me." Daniel's eyes settled on the cracked crystal. In the quiet storage room, surrounded by forgotten machines waiting to be repaired, he suddenly had the unmistakable feeling that the smallest object in the room might also be the most important. Daniel looked at the fractured crystal pendant resting in Arya's open palm. At first glance, it appeared to be nothing more than a damaged piece of jewelry, its transparent center divided by a thin silver crack that caught the pale sunlight spilling through the narrow storage room window. Dust drifted lazily through the beam of light, while the quiet hum of refrigeration units from neighboring market stalls vibrated faintly through the walls. Outside, Meridian Market continued its ordinary routine. Customers bargained over vegetables. Delivery drones announced incoming shipments. Somewhere beyond the shop, a child laughed as a maintenance robot chased a rolling crate across the stone pavement. The ordinary sounds felt strangely distant inside the small storage room. Daniel stepped closer without reaching for the pendant. "That is what everyone is searching for." Arya nodded slowly. "Not because it is valuable." Her fingers tightened gently around the crystal. "Because of what is inside." Daniel frowned. "It still works?" "Barely." She turned the pendant until the fractured edge caught the light. Hidden beneath the decorative silver frame, a tiny blue indicator flickered once before fading again. Daniel recognized the glow immediately. It was not jewelry at all. It was a miniature encrypted data core disguised inside an ornamental necklace. He had repaired enough communication equipment over the years to recognize advanced storage technology when he saw it. "Someone built this very carefully," he said. Arya gave a faint nod. It was designed to survive even if everything else was lost. Daniel remained silent, allowing her to continue at her own pace. She looked toward the small window where morning sunlight painted thin lines across the concrete floor. "I worked as an archival analyst for the Interstellar Trade Council," she said quietly. "I verified shipping records, customs declarations, and humanitarian supply routes." Daniel listened without interrupting. "Several months ago, I found shipments that existed on paper but never reached the colonies listed in the records. Entire cargo manifests disappeared after approval. Relief supplies never arrived where they were promised." She looked back down at the crystal. "I copied the evidence before reporting the discrepancy." "And then?" Daniel asked softly. A tired smile crossed her face. "Then the records began disappearing faster than I could report them." She took a slow breath. "Soon my access codes stopped working. My identity files were suspended. Official notices claimed I had stolen confidential property. By the time I understood what was happening, nobody believed my version anymore." Daniel leaned against an old shelving unit filled with worn circuit boards. "So the city believes they are searching for a criminal?" "Yes." Her voice carried no bitterness, only exhaustion. "But they are really searching for proof." For several moments, neither of them spoke. The silence felt different now. Not uncertain, thoughtful. Daniel glanced toward the closed storage room door. Outside, the market remained busy enough to hide ordinary sounds. but the occasional voice of a security officer still drifted through the open front of the repair shop. The search had not ended. It had simply moved farther down the street. He looked back at Arya. Can the information inside that crystal be recovered? She studied the damaged pendant before answering. Only by someone who knows how to repair delicate electronic systems without destroying corrupted memory sectors. Daniel raised one eyebrow. That sounds very specific. This time her smile became almost genuine. The reports described you as a repair technician who could restore machines everyone else considered beyond saving. Daniel blinked. You knew who I was? I saw the sign above your shop before I fell asleep beneath the cart, she admitted quietly. When I realized I could not walk any farther, I chose the place owned by someone whose reputation was kindness instead of profit. Daniel lowered his eyes for a moment, then looked once more at the tiny crystal glowing faintly inside her hands. Outside, thousands of people continued searching the city for a missing stranger. Inside the little repair shop, he finally understood they had never been searching for the most important thing she carried. The little repair shop settled into an uneasy rhythm as the afternoon sun climbed higher above Meridian Market. Warm light filtered through the dusty front window, reflecting across shelves filled with aging radios, cracked communication tablets, and carefully labeled boxes of electronic components waiting for a second chance. Outside, the market sounded busier than ever. Merchants greeted customers. Hover carts rolled across worn stone streets. Public announcements reminded citizens to remain alert and report any verified sightings related to the ongoing search. Inside the storage room, the world felt much smaller. Daniel carefully cleared a section of his old workbench, brushing away years of fine metallic dust before placing a portable diagnostic scanner beside the cracked crystal pendant. The machine had been repaired so many times that each side panel came from a different manufacturer, yet its soft blue display still flickered to life with dependable determination. Arya watched quietly from the wooden chair beside the bench. Her shoulders seemed less tense than they had been that morning, although her hands still rested protectively around the pendant whenever Daniel was not examining it. He connected a narrow fiber interface to the scanner before stopping halfway. If I make one mistake, he said honestly, the damaged memory sectors could disappear forever. Arya nodded once. I know. You are trusting me anyway. She looked toward the open workshop beyond the storage room. This morning you trusted a stranger enough to bring breakfast before asking questions. A faint smile crossed Daniel's face. Fair point. He adjusted the scanner with slow, careful movements until the tiny blue indicator beneath the crystal responded with a weak pulse. A sequence of encrypted symbols scrolled across the display before freezing almost immediately. Daniel frowned. The storage core is intact, but the security partition is failing. Arya leaned slightly closer. Can it be stabilized? Maybe. He reached into a nearby drawer and removed a small precision soldering tool no larger than a fountain pen. Whoever designed this expected physical damage. They layered the memory beneath multiple protective circuits. He studied the fractured silver frame surrounding the crystal. That is why it survived. Before he could continue, the small bell above the front door chimed softly. Someone had entered the repair shop. Daniel immediately switched off the scanner display. The room fell quiet. Footsteps crossed the wooden floor outside at an unhurried pace. Mr. Brooks, an older voice called politely. Are you available? Daniel glanced toward Arya. She had already stepped farther into the shadow beside the storage shelves without making a sound. He nodded reassuringly before walking into the front of the shop. An elderly fruit vendor named Mr. Alvarez stood near the entrance holding a portable weather radio beneath one arm. The familiar merchant smiled warmly. Sorry to interrupt. My radio stopped receiving market updates again. Daniel accepted the device with an easy smile. Let me guess. It only fails when you actually need it. Mr. Alvarez laughed softly, just like my knees. While Daniel examined the loose antenna connection, the older man lowered his voice. Security officers searched my stall a few minutes ago. Daniel kept his attention on the radio. Looking for the missing girl. Yes. Mr. Alvarez sighed. Poor child, wherever she is. Daniel looked up. You think she is innocent? The elderly merchant rested both hands on his walking cane. I think frightened people deserve to be found by kindness before they are found by fear. The words lingered quietly between them. Daniel handed back the repaired radio. now filling the shop with cheerful market forecasts. After the customer thanked him and disappeared into the afternoon crowd, Daniel stood silently for several moments before returning to the storage room. Arya looked at him with quiet curiosity. "Everything all right?" Daniel nodded. "Better than all right." He placed the precision tool back beside the glowing scanner. "It reminded me that maybe we are not the only people in this city who still believe helping someone matters more than collecting a reward." Outside, the market continued searching for a missing stranger. Inside the little repair shop, hope had quietly become something neither of them carried alone. Late afternoon settled gently across Meridian Market as sunlight reflected from thousands of glass windows and polished metal signs, bathing the narrow streets in warm amber light. Inside Daniel's repair shop, the old diagnostic scanner emitted a steady, reassuring hum while delicate blue symbols slowly moved across its display. He adjusted one tiny calibration dial at a time, careful not to disturb the fragile crystal suspended beneath the scanner's magnifying lens. Every movement demanded patience. Every fraction of an inch mattered. Arya remained beside the workbench, watching without speaking. She had spent months protecting the damaged pendant, yet this was the first time she had seen someone treat it as something worth repairing instead of something worth stealing. The scanner suddenly produced a soft electronic tone. Daniel leaned closer. Something changed. Across the small display, several encrypted partitions flickered before one narrow section finally stabilized. A single hidden directory appeared beneath the damaged security layer. Daniel carefully selected the recovery option. The machine paused. Then, one after another, file names emerged from the corrupted memory. Shipping manifests, customs revisions, relief convoy authorizations, financial transfer ledgers. None of the files were complete, but enough remained intact to reveal the same pattern repeating again and again. Daniel slowly exhaled. These shipments were redirected after approval. Arya nodded quietly. "That is exactly what I found." She stepped closer to the screen. Medical supplies disappeared. Emergency food deliveries vanished. Entire humanitarian convoys officially arrived, while real colonies received nothing. Daniel continued opening additional records. The signatures approving the changes all belonged to different officials. "Look closer." He enlarged the authorization codes. Every document appeared unique until one small technical detail repeated beneath each approval. The same encrypted routing certificate had processed every transaction. Daniel frowned. One network. Different names. Exactly. Arya folded her hands together. Someone built a system where responsibility always belonged to somebody else. Before either of them could continue, every light inside the shop dimmed briefly. The diagnostic scanner automatically switched to battery power while a citywide notification echoed through the market outside. "Attention citizens. The search operation is entering its final phase. Security checkpoints are now active throughout Meridian District." Daniel looked toward the front window. Additional patrol vehicles rolled quietly into the square while information screens updated with new search zones. The atmosphere remained calm, but the city had clearly become far more organized. Arya stepped back from the workbench. There will not be another day. Daniel understood immediately. If the evidence stayed hidden much longer, someone else would eventually find her first. He carefully removed the crystal from the scanner and placed it inside a padded electronic storage case designed to protect delicate circuit boards. Then we stopped thinking about hiding. Arya looked at him with surprise. "What are you saying?" He closed the protective case with a gentle click. "The evidence belongs somewhere nobody can quietly erase it." She studied him for several seconds before asking the question she had avoided all day. "You still believe me?" Daniel smiled faintly while sliding the case into the inside pocket of his worn work jacket. "I believed you before I saw the files." "Why?" He looked around the little repair shop filled with forgotten machines waiting for another chance to work again. "Because people who lie usually tell you how important they are." His eyes met hers. "You spent the whole day worrying about people you have never met." Arya lowered her gaze for a moment, then quietly laughed for the first time since he had found her beneath the old market cart. The sound was soft, uncertain, and wonderfully genuine. Outside, Meridian continued searching every street for one missing stranger. Inside the small repair shop, the truth no longer existed only inside a broken crystal. It now existed inside the quiet decision of two ordinary people who had chosen that by morning, the evidence would finally be seen by those who could no longer pretend it had never existed. The first light of dawn spread slowly across Meridian City, turning the glass towers beyond the market into ribbons of gold reflected against the quiet morning sky. Delivery drones resumed their daily routes while trains glided silently above elevated transit lines. From the outside, everything looked exactly as it had the day before. Inside the Central Civic Records building, however, nothing would ever be the same again. Daniel stood beside a reception terminal wearing the same faded brown work jacket he had worn every morning for years. The padded electronic case rested securely beneath one arm. Beside him, Arya wore the oversized gray travel jacket that had sheltered her beneath the old market cart only one day earlier. She no longer looked over her shoulder every few seconds. She looked forward. A senior registry officer welcomed them into a secure review chamber lined with transparent display panels and softly glowing archive servers. The room smelled faintly of polished metal, recycled air, and warm electronic circuits. Daniel carefully removed the crystal from its protective case and placed it onto the verification platform. The recovery scanner connected automatically. Blue light traveled through the fractured pendant before flowing across the room in thousands of tiny luminous symbols. One recovered document appeared, then another, then hundreds more. Shipping records aligned with customs declarations. Financial transfers matched redirected cargo routes. Humanitarian relief manifests revealed entire deliveries that had never reached the colonies listed on official records. The review officers remained silent as the evidence assembled itself piece by piece into a pattern too complete to dismiss as coincidence. One investigator quietly removed his identification badge and placed it on the table before contacting the Independent Oversight Division. Another requested immediate preservation orders for every related archive. No one raised a voice. The truth required no dramatic speech. It only required that someone finally stopped deleting it. By midday, the citywide emergency broadcast changed. The search notices disappeared from every public screen. In their place appeared a brief official statement confirming that previous identification records had been withdrawn pending investigation into extensive administrative corruption. Throughout Meridian Market, merchants paused to read the announcement. Some exchanged surprised glances. Others simply returned to their work in thoughtful silence. Mr. Alvarez smiled quietly outside his fruit stand before placing a basket of fresh apples beside Daniel's repair shop without leaving a note. That afternoon, Arya returned to the old market street where Daniel had first found her. The abandoned wooden cart still leaned against the same weathered stone wall, unnoticed by nearly everyone walking past. She stood beside it for several moments before gently placing the old blanket across the cart one final time. It no longer belonged beneath it. Daniel unlocked his repair shop as usual. Customers soon arrived carrying broken radios, damaged tablets, and worn household appliances needing another chance to work again. Life continued the only way it knew how. Before opening the front door completely, he noticed Arya standing quietly across the street holding 2 paper bags from the bakery. Warm steam drifted into the cool morning air exactly as it had the day before. She crossed the street with an easy smile that no longer looked borrowed from fear. She handed one bag to Daniel. "Breakfast before questions?" she asked. Daniel accepted it with a gentle laugh. "I think that is becoming a tradition." They sat together on the wooden bench outside the little repair shop while the city gradually filled with another ordinary day. People walked past without recognizing either of them. Nobody pointed. Nobody searched. The old market cart remained only an old market cart once again. Years later, when reporters asked how the investigation that transformed Meridian had truly begun, officials spoke about recovered evidence, independent audits, and restored public records. Daniel remembered something much simpler. A quiet breath beneath weathered wood. A loaf of warm bread. A stranger who needed kindness before explanations. Sometimes a city changes because someone uncovers the truth. Sometimes it changes because one ordinary person chooses to notice the life everyone else walked past. And in a universe filled with remarkable technology, that remained the rarest miracle of all.